Hey there, super second graders. It is time for chapter 4, part 2. I believe we're on part 2, right? Yeah. Okay. So, in the previous chapter, we're dealing with a very selfish little boy whose name is Dick. Okay. Mothers always do cheer up when they think of Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle because she knows so much about children. After all, she has had about 1,000 little boys and girls come to her house and pull taffy, play checkers, bake cookies, drink tea, and dig for pirate gold buried in her backyard. And so she has had plenty of opportunity to learn about childish ailments and cures for them. She was certainly the person to ask about Dick and the selfish boy, and Mrs. Thompson telephoned her. She said, "Hello, Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle. This is Dick. This is Mrs. Thompson, Dick Thompson's mother." Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle said, "Well, hello, Mrs. Thompson. I have rather expected you to call." Mrs. Thompson said, "You have? Why, because I know your son very well," said Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle. "And although he is a dear little boy and the most well-mannered child who comes to visit me, never once forgetting to say thank you and please, he is very selfish." "Okay, I know he is," says Mrs. Thompson, almost crying, because she was so ashamed that Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle should know how selfish her little son was. Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle said, "Now, Mrs. Thompson, do not feel sad. Selfishness and greediness are just a disease like the measles and chickenpox and can be cured very easily. But we must start now before another day passes, because your son is such a nice little boy, and we want everyone to like him as we do." "Oh, do you like him, in spite of selfishness?" said Mrs. Thompson. "Of course I do," said Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle. "I love all the children, but it distresses me when I see a child who has a disease like selfishness, or answer-backism, or won't put toys away itis, and his parents don't do a thing to cure him." "But I want to cure your son, my son," said his mother. "I will do anything to cure him." Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle said, "The selfishness cure is really very simple, but the rules must be followed very strictly. You will come down here and get a selfishness kit, and at this time I will give you the directions for how to use it." "Thank you very much, dear Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle," said Mrs. Thompson. "I will leave right now." And she hung up the phone, slipped on a jacket, and ran all the way to Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle's house. When she arrived, Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle was on the front porch waiting for her. The porch beside her, on the porch beside her was a quite a large green metal box with "Selfishness Kit" painted on its side in white letters. Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle invited Mrs. Thompson to sit down, and when she opened the kit. Inside were about 25 padlocks of various sizes. They were great big ones, about the size of an apple, down to little tiny ones, not much larger than a penny. Also, there were screws and screwdrivers, a box of cloth labels that said Dick, and a box of blank gummed labels, a small can of white paint, a small can of black paint, and a small paintbrush, and a pastry bag. This is a large bag with a nozzle on the end. When filled with frosting can be squeezed and the frosting comes out at the end like toothpaste, and it can be formed into words. Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle said, "Mrs. Thompson, these padlocks are for your son's drawers, his closets, his toy chest, his bicycle, his bedroom door, his nightstand drawer, and his toothbrush. As soon as you get home, put padlocks on everything that he owns and give him the keys. This is to assure that he and he alone can touch his things. The name labels are to be sewn into all of his clothes, and the gum stickers are to be put on all of his books. Even his school books, notebooks, pencil boxes are to be pasted, and to be pasted on his ruler, crayons, paints. You know what I mean. On each sticker, print in large black letters, Dick's book, do not touch. Dick's notebook, do not touch, and so forth. On every toy he owns, you must paint in either black or white paint. Dick's ball don't touch. Dick's bat don't touch. But Put the name of the toy first and then don't touch. The pastry bag is to be filled with simple white frosting and used to mark Dick's sandwiches and his fruit and cookies and his plate for each meal. That's all there is to it. I expect you will be returning the selfishness kit before the week has passed. Mrs. Thompson said, I do hope so, Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle. Are you sure it'll work? It has cured hundreds of other kids, and I see no reason why it won't cure your son. A week, or even less, I should say. Mrs. Thompson thanked Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle very much, and then she lugged the kit and walked home. As soon as she hung up her jacket, she began sewing the labels into all of her son's clothes. He asked what she was doing, and when she showed him, he was happy as could be. But, boy, that will just show people who owns my clothes, he said proudly. Mrs. Thompson did not answer, but she continued to put labels on every single stitch of clothing, including his socks and his handkerchiefs. Then she opened the kit and took out the tiniest padlock. She fastened it on his toothbrush to the toothbrush rack with a little padlock, snapped it shut, and handed him a key, which was no bigger than a pin. To Dick, you better find a ring to hold your keys, she said. You're going to have about 25 of them. Boy, that's just wonderful, he said fondly. The tiny key, looking at the tiny key and thinking, that's my toothbrush, and nobody but me can touch it. He was very happy. Ooh, I don't know if this is going to work. What do you think is going to happen? Make a prediction, and I'll see you next time.